When do you need to add new channels? What's the best way to do it? And what channels should you add first? Hello and welcome to Growth Masterminds. My name is John Koetsier. We have a super special episode today with not one, not two, but three experts on growth and diversification. We've been talking about growing games in 2025 for a while now. We've talked about creative. We talked about iOS optimization. We've talked about hybrid monetization. We've also talked about retargeting, re-engagement. Now we're going to talk about channel diversification. We're going to kind of start from the beginning, the cold start. We'll talk about timing, when to diversify. Talk about testing new partners. What does that mean? What's that look like? Testing new channels. What's that mean and look like? We'll talk about scaling, rewarded channels, influencers, CTV, and our experts' top tips for 2025. And we're going to fit that all in like an hour. I mean, is this even possible? Who knows? We'll see. We're going to go for it here. Those experts are Matej Lancaric. He's probably needs no intro, right? He's a UA consultant. He's a longtime growth exec. He's a podcast host. We just saw the half of 2.5 Gamers who has currently left the room. I was hoping to get some insight from that half, but hey, we'll see what goes on. And he does much more. We also have Kyle West, who's Senior Director of Marketing at Mistplay. He's been a long-time executive at Gameloft, so super pumped to see his insights. And last but not least, we have Brendan O'Connor, Growth Director at Moloco. He formerly led UA at AGS Interactive, spent some time at Vungle and LoopMe. Vungle, I haven't heard that one in a while. That I don't think that one exists anymore.
all rolled up.
Exactly. But welcome all. I'm super pumped. This is gonna be awesome. You guys ready?
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Rock and roll. Matej, we're gonna start with you, and we're gonna start with the cold start. You're a brand new game publisher. Where do you start? What channels and partners do you start with?
Well, I usually, when I have a new game that I work with, I usually start, surprise, on Facebook, Google, then adding TikTok, and then the fun starts. As soon as they scale, then it starts with upload. Actually, before upload, there is a Moloco. I'm sorry, Brenda, I keep forgetting about Moloco. I ran a lot of campaigns on Moloco, but I keep forgetting about
Sandy. I know. You told me what a hack with Moloco like half a year ago.
Saying like, and then as we go forward, usually all the other ad networks, Unity, Iron Source, and again, I'm sorry, Kyle, but then afterwards, it all starts with rewarded kind of UA channels, because I found out it's too early to add anything else unless I spend some. It doesn't need to be significant amount of money on Facebook or Google, but it kind of starts there.
Mm-hmm.
Easier to set up for sure.
Sure. Okay, cool. So, but there comes a time when it is time to expand, and maybe you run out of stuff that you can try and do on Meta, on Google. You're looking to expand your partners. Kyle, let's start with you. When is that time?
Yeah, I mean, you can think about it in a couple ways, right? One is obviously, hopefully you're getting the performance you're looking for from your initial launch on your partners. Is there something else you're looking for, right? It's always that balance of volume, that balance of quality. Eventually, as you cold start, right, you're going to have to derive that. In some channels, you can do it all. Some channels are really special in one way or another. And so I think that's the piece, right? It's also a good learning and development phase, right? As you're getting data from all these channels at lower scale, that might not be the case at higher scale. So you can start to layer in your sort of media mix and incremental add to it as you go, thinking about what are your goals? What performance are you seeing? Do you have budget that you do just want to test and put a couple tests out there? You don't want to spread yourself too thin, right? Matej was kind of alluding to that earlier.
Yeah.
So it is sort of a sequential piece. We just recently launched in Japan, right? And we launched with 3 partners at the start, right? And so 2 to 3 is probably good off the rip. And as you go a couple months later, then you start to add in more and you find the pockets of traffic you're looking for or the type of quality you're looking for. And that can naturally sort of parlay into which sources you trigger next.
Yeah. Brendan, anything to add there?
No, these guys hit it on the head, right? It's important to kind of establish your baseline, right? And I think the tier 1 self-tributing networks really lend themselves to that. It's you can get in there. Their tools for launching your own stuff are very robust. And then as you add, right, I think the only thing I would add there is, you got to look at what you need. And I think Kyle kind of hit on that, right? as you add in new partners, ask yourself, what am I adding this for? Do they have tools that are going to really allow me to test? Do I need this partner to be a fully managed service that's going to come in because I've got a small team and I don't really have time to add this? And that value of having a team at this partner to set up, manage, and report back to me on everything and handle it all, like that's going to be of a higher value early on than maybe if you're a more expansive team and you've got hands and, hey, we know what we're doing. That level of service doesn't weight quite as high, right? So you got to look at where you are in your journey, both as a company and whatever you're putting out there into the market.
Brendan, when I find this magical company that has all the resources they need or want, and all the people that they need or want, I will report back to you. I mean, you talk to the biggest, and they're like, we're swamped, we can't do anything. We talk to the smallest, and everybody's wearing like 7 hats, right? And
That's how it works. That's how it works.
It's how it works. That's also how you get smart, interesting people, because they do 5 different things. They learn things in one and they apply it in another. It's awesome. It's great. That's how you get really well-rounded. And obviously, sometimes you specialize. But Matej, I want to ask you, because we talk very easily about adding a partner, add a partner, and we know that there's some technological hurdles there, and there's some people hurdles there as well. But what does a good test of a new partner look like? I mean, do you throw $1,000 there? Oh, it didn't work. Then we go. Is it $100K? What's a good test look like?
I don't like to think about adding a new partner in a way that you need to spend, let's say, 20, 30K per month, and then I will see what happens. Usually that doesn't really work. So it does really require some level of budget per day. Honestly, I don't really like to go wild from the start. So I'd start like 500 a day and leave it for a while, because I really want to see the trajectory and if the new channel is moving in the right direction. Because obviously you add a new channel, it won't hit the goals immediately. It's just, it needs different creative approach, different geos, different optimizations. It takes time. So I mean, sometimes it can be a lot of money for testing, but that's the thing. So yeah, 500 a day, then go from there. I'm checking the day 1, day 3, day 7 benchmarks. If I'm really being kind of close to that after 2 weeks, great. If it's month, it's still okay. And unless I see like we are moving in the right direction, that's the most important thing.
So you see you're moving in the right direction, then you start expanding. If you see, hey, actually there's better performance here than in the partners I started with, then you just redirect budget. There you go.
Also, I think important to note is I'm not only starting with one geo, because I want to have multiple benchmarks on the new channel, because you're like, if it doesn't work in the US, okay, let's just move on. Again, it's not really the ideal scenario. So let's say tier 1 countries. Ideal scenario is like iOS and Android, because again, I've seen different channels have very different performance on different platforms as well. So yeah.
It's really interesting. I just had somebody on chatting about geos, and 40% of UA spend globally outside of China, excepting China, is in the US. 40% of UA spend is in the US, right? And so it's a hardcore market. It's a challenging market. There are other markets to look at that are high end, that are niche, but they in some sense, but they are high end and they spend well. But yeah, everybody wants the US.
John, I can give you one example from the recording that we did yesterday, actually. So there are companies from Vietnam, big companies, who are spending all the money outside of US, and they are making millions a month, honestly. And it's not like a small amount of money. So there are players outside of US. They are cheaper, obviously. The CPIs are lower, but also LTV is lower. And that's fine. But then kind of eventually goes to volume play. So more installs from tier 2, tier 3 countries still can make you a lot of money.
And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, go where you can find success, right? Exactly. Kyle, let's bring you in here. Talk about some of the geos, and maybe also, when is the right time to add the DSP, and where do you go with it?
Yeah. I mean, I think, Matej was right. Like you got to test your geos on all your different platforms, right? Like you could see really strong success on TikTok in Korea, right? And then maybe you see softer performance in another geo. Other than that, right, and especially when you start looking towards APAC, there's a lot of local networks to test, right? And now I don't think those necessarily have to come at the start, right? Like you can get by with the Googles, the Facebooks, the TikToks, App Levins of the world, Molocos of the world at the start as part of your core initial launch mix. And then once you start to really scale and you're looking to put more pockets of budget elsewhere and put that to work, there's a lot of local networks, right, in Korea, in Japan, that can get you just access to even a more niche specific audience, right? An engaged audience that's hyper fixated around that engagement platform, whether it's another chat or social network locally, whether it's an in-house network that they built just for that region of players. So I think that's important. I think the DSPs come in really useful in multiple ways. One, if you are a small team, right, they can help you in that regards, right? And you kind of get access to a lot of inventory. Two, and I think we've seen this a lot, especially with Moloco, and not just to toot their own horn, but DSPs are really there to help work with you, right? The stronger the partnership you can have with them, the more you connect either your data team with their data team, the more juice you can squeeze, right?
If I had $1 for every time I have see somebody complaining in a Slack channel, a public Slack channel, can I get a hold of somebody at Meta?
Yeah.
How do I get in touch with somebody at Google?
Google is not the problem. Facebook is.
Yeah.
These days.
So anyway, I'll pass it over to Brendan or Matej if they have more. But I think there's definitely a time and place for DSPs, and especially as marketers are looking to get the most bang for their buck and really go custom and really get sort of bespoke. These DSPs are out there and offering and willing to be that partner in hand.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely agree with that, right? When you're looking at what DSPs provide, what we can do, putting those data teams together, a lot of times we all talk about machine learning, we all talk about algorithms, what we can do. It's very important to remember, like, hey, when you get to that spot, when hey, I need to point all this math and all these algorithms at like this event, this specific thing going on in my app, because this is indicative of quality. This is where it wants to go. And maybe that's where I am right now. Okay, then we can test something else. And you have to have a DSP partner who's going to work with you to find that right mix, to find the right way to run your campaigns, to experiment with you and work with you to make sure you are getting the most out of the product that you're working with, which is, that's, I would say, once you have that baseline, you're able to start doing that testing and do it effectively. That's when it's really important to add that DSP and one that will service your campaigns in that way.
Okay, let's move up, let's say, in order of magnitude in scaling. And I want to start talking about channels. And it's messy to talk about partners and channels because many partners encompass many channels, and some ad partners are just in one channel, right? And it gets a little confusing here. But I'm thinking, in-app ads as a channel, which maybe others would disagree with. I don't know. But then you look at stuff like influencer. We're going to look at rewarded. We're going to look at CTV and stuff like that. So the first, let's start here, and we'll start with Matej. Okay, if you want to scale, and you think you want to scale beyond in-app ads, how do you know that you need to, and where do you go first?
So as a UA person, you always have a problem. If you have a small budget, you have a problem where to spend it. If you have a high budget, again, where to spend it.
Same problem.
Same problem. It's like the different levels of budget, but same problem. And if you think about it, honestly, in UA, there wasn't a big innovation for a while. So you're kind of running out of channels, or you were running out of channels. I think Kyle and the team at Mistplay did a very good job back in the days where it was just basically the first kind of the rewarded channel. Now you look around, and it's like 20 of them. It's like 20.
40. There's a lot.
Yeah. So, and it's important, like this, I'm not saying this is innovation, but it's kind of, again, like one step forward, which all the UA managers need, because we are stuck with the traditional channels. CTV, it's there, but it's not there yet. So it's like kind of, it's big in the US, in like people in Europe don't understand like what the CTV even means. So like that's a big problem. But in the US definitely works. So, but okay, back to the diversification. When I want to just grow the game and I have still some budget left, then I try to look for new ways how to get players in. Reward channels are definitely the great way how to do it. There are some caveats and different things how to optimize those, but I just want to run those. The problem I had usually is it's small scale, well, relatively small scale, like against the Facebooks and all the traditional channels. So you need to group more of them together to be able to kind of grow the budget. But then I'm looking at is just ROAS and or just the goals that we want to hit. And if I have budgets left, then I'm just adding new channels as we go. Influencers, yes, but again, not the main pillar of the whole UA channel mix.
Yeah. Brendan, your thoughts? Same question.
Yeah, I would agree with what Matej said there. I would add measurement's going to be very important, right? A little bit of a singular podcast. So should you guys there? But no, it is, right? If you're starting to add non-mobile channels and so much of your budgetary decisions are going to be based upon mobile app install feedback, right? And making sure that if you add a CTV channel that, you're going to be able to measure it and figure out, hey, who did drive that install? How effective was this ad compared to what is traditionally, apps and apps, right? And that's what everyone's kind of built to measure. So making sure that you have those tools, making sure that if you're using offer codes for influencers, right, you're able to properly say, hey, it was this influencer or that influencer, but also was it driven by the mobile channel that might have gotten the attribution, even though they put in the code that they say heard on the radio or saw on a YouTube video, to make sure that you're able to handle that. So essentially what I'm saying is if you're adding more channels, making sure you're able to properly sort out that measurement, making proper budgetary decisions accordingly, and looking at the incremental value that each channel is going to add.
I was waiting for that word. Incrementality, right? We're doing stuff. Does it add? Am I fishing in new ponds, right? Kyle, you've done UA, you've led growth, so put that hat on for a moment.
Yeah.
How many ad partners should you have at varying levels of spend?
I think it's a great question. There's not one size fits all, right? But once you do get to scale, right, and maybe you're starting to get into the 8-figure range, right, or mid to high 8 figures or more, right, I think my mindset shifts more to like sort of a logical answer of the sense of how many can you manage to the point where performance is hitting goal, and the day-to-day cost, which is namely time efficiency of operating these channels, doesn't outweigh the incremental performance gain from it, right? Like you have to think about it as portfolio management, right? At the end of the day, and you're prudently optimizing that portfolio. And so, especially at those levels of scale, right, you're going to be tasked with, yes, maybe you have a North Star metric, but you're still going to have to balance quality and volume. I'd say largely speaking from experience, right? Like probably 3 to 4 channels are going to take up perhaps 50 to 60% of your media buying, right? And then you have this long tail that might include another 15 to 20. And each of those is going to play a role in some incremental way. And, if you're running a source that's capped out on volume, but has good quality, you're probably still going to keep it live if it's easy to manage and easy to optimize. And then you have to remember as well, that long tail is not just some static piece, right? There's constantly channels coming and going because at those levels of scale, you also have to just continuously test. And you might test a channel and it won't work. You'll test it again 6 to 9 months later. Maybe it will work. Maybe you'll get 1 to 2 winners a year of a channel that you test, and then now it becomes a larger share of wallet in your media mix. So those are some of the ways I would think about it, right? Because we kind of joked about it earlier. It's the worst case scenario in the world, or it's the worst feeling in the world when your CFO comes to you and you're like, hey, here's a bunch more budget, and then you can't find the right place to spend it effectively.
Yes, exactly. I want to dive into rewarded. So we're going to stick with you, Kyle. We saw huge growth here. Matej mentioned it, right? 20, 40 different companies doing this stuff. Do you see that continuing into 2025? What's driving that here?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it's driven by, this increased demand is because of the headwinds, right, that are persistent in the industry, right? Competition remains fierce, right? Longstanding games are maturing and still, maintaining at the tops of the charts, and a lot of effort goes in to keep them there. New games can be hit or miss. We know consumer IAP spend, right, can be a little concerning and puts pressure on revenues and profit. acquisition costs continue to get more expensive and you lose control. I think the value of rewarded advertising, right, is one, it's a very native feeling experience, right? Like users are opting in to discover and play these games. Two, historically, rewarded, right, guides users deeper into engagement, deeper into the funnel, nurturing the longer term engagement. But I think, is it continuing and will it continue to thrive? I think yes, because there's sort of this new age of rewarded advertising platforms, right? And that's where there's this supplemental extrinsic value, right? Gift cards, tangible rewards beyond in-app currency. And that appeals to users and it appeals to spenders, right? Who feels like they can start to get cash back almost for their purchases. And it's moved beyond, Matej was talking on this earlier, right? Not only has the competition increased, but the sophistication as well, right? It's not just targeting age and gender. Now there's AI, there's machine learning going into the back end of these game recommendation engines and these outbidding algorithms to match the right games to the right users with the right rewards. And then, the last thing I would add is sort of this two-way relationship, right? Traditional rewarded platforms, you go back 5-10 years ago, very transactional. Do this, get this reward. It's skewing more experiential now, right? Like Facebook, Google, traditional media sources, they're just playing matchmaker. They show an ad to a high intent user. Rewarded platforms now, right, with their owned and operated inventory, you can send emails, you can send push notifications to these users, you can activate special events and promotions, you can foster continuous engagement. All of that sort of helps contribute and drive towards LTV. So that's why, it's a biased answer, but bullish on rewarded advertising continuing to sort of be a trend.
It's interesting because a lot of rewarded players, and it sounds like you as well, are digging into sort of gaming DNA. Like, why does somebody like this game? What other games would they like? And maybe I need to go there personally because I've been like the main game I play. I've been feeling like they've been pretty mercenary lately, and I've been feeling like when you get to the point where they're really heavily monetizing and the gameplay is really like you're gonna die unless you buy. Right. So you start feeling like, oh, what else? Maybe I need another game, right? I'm really invested in this one. I've spent a lot here, but maybe there's something else. And I've been unable to find the replacement. So maybe something like that would work for me. I'll have to check that out. Brendan, I want to go to you. And I want to talk a little bit about influencers, and we'll go to Matej on that as well a little bit later. I've heard like influencers is really critical in certain channels. We know that it's really critical in, let's say, beauty, in fashion, even in retail. We've seen that it's actually pretty critical as well. I've been seeing more influencer in gaming as well. Where do you see that? What do you see is happening there?
Yeah, I think that, ultimately, as you're adding influencers into your mix, you have to look at like, is this going to be more effective? And this is where it comes into gaming, right? More effective than, showing the ad in another game, right? And I think that that's one thing that gaming has that maybe these other verticals don't, right? When you look at shopping, if you look at the beauty space, there's not a ton of time and eyeball time spent in this giant ecosystem of beauty apps, right? That are necessarily going to give you a reward for watching a video, to potentially advertise their competitor because you need more lives because you've died in the game, right? And so because of that, you need to be able to reach people in a time when they're able to be influenced and push a little more, which is why you see that grow in the space. For gaming, because so much of the ecosystem is built on this in-app model, while the adding in influencers is going to be useful. I watch tons and tons of YouTube videos. I see games advertised to me all the time there. But compared to when I'm actually sitting on my phone and playing games, I do find that those are more compelling to me. While there's obviously match if I'm consuming the content of an influencer and you want to get that your ad in front of them, I do think the ecosystem as it's built allows for that kind of targeting, that matching that Kyle was talking about, that recommendation. Like all of these, speaking about Moloco, our DSP is built around how do we put the right ad in front of the right user, give it all the kind of data points that we have, which the games world is built out for, compared to influencers where you are reaching a great audience. There's a space for that. But the ecosystem as it stands in-app right now is entirely built to make sure that you're doing what you're trying to achieve, maybe in other verticals, with your influencer marketing.
Matej, that sort of sounds similar to how you were going on influencers when you mentioned it very briefly earlier on.
Yeah, look, so it's a good addition to the main UA channel mix, but it's an addition. You can't rely only on influencers. When you could look at the e-commerce business, it's kind of a little bit different, and they rely a lot on the influencer marketing campaigns. In here, influencers, you always use them as let's call it creators, and put them as a UGC on top of the ads, rather than just run the whole YouTube channels, Instagram channels, or whatever else. This works. Even though in the era of AI, I kind of do replace them with AI people sometimes, and it works quite well. So it's gonna be a lot of interesting
influencer.
Yeah, you would be surprised. But yeah, I mean, like, jokes aside, yeah, that's my main usage for influencers, creators in ads, and actually that works super well on TikTok. So yeah,
I think that I've seen that work a lot, and obviously we all get those ads all the time, right? So that makes tons of sense. Kyle, influencer is a bit of a high lift channel, right? I mean, if you're going to do that, and if you're actually going to try and really go into influencers and not fake influencers, which is viable and works and all that stuff, there's some high lift there. You got to have some hands-on attention to these people, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we did influencer back when I was at Gameloft, right? And it obviously is time consuming, right? That's why these roles pop up. What's very rare and what's nice to see when you're interviewing these candidates and building out your program is, can you get a performance driven influencer marketing manager? There's always going to be a layer of, yes, it's a bit brand, there's a bit of uplift, it's a bit of a very social native content and engagement, but can you do everything you can, or can you think through your strategy as a performance marketer and translate that to be successful on influencer? It takes a lot of hands-on work. It really comes down to the match, right? Like, the influencer has their audience, the influencer has that relationship. You have a product, you have your own core persona and core audience that you need to marry together. Can you really lock down an authentic and trustworthy value proposition and key messaging that the creator can engage with their audience on and can actually feel, right? Like, the worst thing ever is working with influencers and creators who just read the ad read or the script, right? And it misses that whole emotional connection and the whole point in this very native sort of platform and content engagement, right? And a sponsored piece is the soft sell of, I've used this product, I believe in it, I have fun with it, I think you can as well, versus the harder nature of a traditional ad.
Yeah, it's also interesting, right? And Matej, I think it was in your newsletter maybe 2 weeks ago or something like that, Scopely's Monopoly Go ads, right? Their global campaign, right? They've got Chris Pratt. This is influencer times a million, right? These are stars, right? Chris Pratt. You got Jason Momoa. You got, I don't know, Kiki Palmer. Maybe I'm just an idiot. You got Will Ferrell voicing somebody. But I mean, that's star power, right? But you know what? Honestly, I just checked the sort of the install velocity on Monopoly Go. I didn't see a big result in the last few weeks.
I'm not allowed to talk about Monopoly Go anymore.
Have you gotten in trouble?
No. Jokes aside. Look, it's with celebrities and all of this, it's very slippery slope. It's expensive, and I think only CoinMaster did this right back in the days because it's quite early on, and I could see the big jump in the revenues, in the installs as well. But that could be also external factors. It was around COVID and all of that. It's so hard. Also heard different anecdotes about Pedro Pascal. I heard that it wasn't really profitable. Now I got back from the team, like, it might be the best campaign. And you never know. So it's very mixed.
We're looking from the outside.
Yeah, exactly. All the outside, you have all the external data. It points in a very different direction. So, and also only big companies can afford these types of campaigns. So it's very different. So it's influencers on steroids. Let's call it that way.
I will say, when Schwarzenegger was in, I think it was it Call of Duty? I mean, that was a big deal. Thank you. That was a big freaking deal. And then when Kate Upton was in the ads for somebody helping out
as well, Gods of War.
I mean, wow. Right? There was some impact there. But that was back in the day as well. So yeah, it's a big swing. You might hit a homer, but you might also not. I want to talk about CTV a little bit, and Matej, we're going to start with you on that one because you talked about that one a little bit. Here's what I'll say to kick that off. I have been seeing. I do the quarterly trend reports for Singular. I do the ROI index for Singular, and I have been seeing CTV networks just creep up, creep up, creep up, creep up over the last 8 to 10 quarters or so. They've been getting more and more significant there, and they're not at the level of many other channels or many other partners. That is 100% absolutely true. But I have also talked to people who have said, hey, you know what? Sometimes you need to do actual marketing, and your performance marketing is great. You're grabbing the low hanging fruit, but sometimes you need to plant a tree, right? And grow the orchard. And sometimes CTV works there. And we're seeing interesting things. I just had Peter Hamilton on. He runs ad innovation for Roku. And we're seeing interesting things in how the measurement and how the actual clickability, if I can put it that way, actionability, performance capability of CTV is growing. Your thoughts, Matej?
Yeah, so I think, again, as I said early on, its problem is with the education of the industry, because people still don't understand how it works, what should they do, how to measure it. And that's like, until that happens, it's going to grow step by step, but it's not going to be at a big scale, at least in Europe. In US, that's fine, because people know, oh, here I have all these different networks.
Yes.
Oh, okay, now I understand. You
Prime,
say, oh, yeah,
Disney
Prime,
Plus,
Hulu, whatever, and it's like people, they
Peacock.
don't, yeah, exactly. It's like, well, what is that? So people don't understand. And then you say, oh, it's almost like
Crave.
it's almost, it's almost like Netflix. Oh, okay, but it's not really, but kind of in terms of the UA. It's just until that happens, like we won't be having very big scale in Europe for CTV.
Yep.
On the other hand, if you have a company which is big enough and understands in general, this is a channel on the UA side that it needs to be added into the UA channel mix, they will do it. Like Dream does it. All the big companies that they really want to spend, and they have big data teams as well. They understand like how to measure it properly. Easy. Small teams. That's why I said if you're a small team, you have a new game. Where do you start? It's not CTV.
No.
It's because
You don't
tough.
start there. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's tough. And I have it in my to-do list to just start running it for 2 years. I still haven't done it.
I hate those lists. I have like a folder action.
Yeah.
I literally am looking at that folder on my desktop right now. Action. I haven't touched it in half a year. Something's wrong.
I want to run it. I want to test it finally, but there's like no one brave enough to just start running because we just lack resources on different fronts.
Yeah, exactly. Brendan, Kyle, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I would add to that. Definitely don't start with CTV.
All my budget, all my $500.
Yeah, like there you go.
Exactly. No, I think we've seen the same thing, right? So at Moloco, we plug into CTV exchanges. We've run CTV campaigns with our partners. And the ones that are successful are already running very successful UA campaigns across the board, right? They have exactly what was just said. They have the ability to measure. They kind of know how to differentiate what CTV is. And I think what, kind of one thing I would add to that is they don't treat it as just, oh, this is the same as adding a Moloco or an AppLovin, right? They treat it as the differentiated platform that it is, right? It is a little bit of a branding exercise. It is a great opportunity to showcase maybe new features, tentpole events, big changes that have maybe come to a more established game than, oh, this is a brand new thing you got to check out, right? Because if you're doing that first one, it comes and goes. No one uses the QR codes. No one ends up downloading that way, right? So if you're using it to try it, just get it installed. You're going to have a more difficult time. But if you're going to use it, you're going to tailor your creative, and you're going to treat it as the wide reach channel that it truly is. We have seen success there.
Yeah. A couple interesting things that you just triggered in my mind there, Brennan. One is there's research that suggests that not maybe you click on those QR codes, but when you have them there, you get more performance on that ad. It's just because it is like a mental flip that there's something that people want me to do here. And so you get more performance. That's interesting. The other thing that I thought about as you were talking is I have talked to a number of people who said, you know what? CTV is like early days of in-app. Not it's the same kind of thing. It is a different world, like you just said, right? But that there isn't a ton of, how's the right word to say, intelligence or competition, or like in-app is insane, right? It is Darwinian evolution times 1,000 on steroids, jacked up to the gills on whatever street drug you want, right? I mean, it's like hardcore. CTV, not so much. So when you bring in some of your honed, trained, beasts of UA, and they actually get the flavor of it, there's opportunity to do some amazing things. So that I'll leave it at that. But it is interesting to see every quarter to see some growth there. I want to go to everybody now and ask kind of 3 questions, and we're going to go round robin here. And the first one's going to be, what ad partners do you think will be most interesting in 2025? If you are part of an ad network, you're allowed to say yourself, and you might have somebody else as well. Okay. And then I'm going to ask, what channels do you think will be most interesting in 2025? And then I'm going to ask, what have I missed? What have I not asked that, I'm a complete moron and we need to talk about? So I'm going to start with Kyle. We'll go to Matej, then we'll go to Brendan. We'll just keep that order so you know when you're up. So Kyle is in tough because he's the first one.
Spot, yeah.
He's got to think of something on the spot here.
That's
Kyle,
right.
what ad partners do you think will be most interesting in 2025?
I mean, I do think Rewarded will continue to evolve, but I'm not going to base my answer
That's
on
a
that.
channel, my friend. What ad partner?
Okay. Partners, specific partners.
You're allowed to say your own.
I'm going to go with, well, I can say my own, but yeah, well, Mistplay, sure. We've got a lot of great stuff cooking, but no, I'd actually go with Moloco. I do think they have really sort of been the rising star in DSPs over the last few years. I think they're continuing to do that. And kind of like I was talking on earlier, the reason I say that is just because of the proactiveness they take to work with you directly, right? It's not just fully managed service, right? It's not just, hey, we want to do this. It's let's develop a strategy. Let's develop a business plan. Let's work hand in hand. So I'm really bullish on that.
Wow, cool. And it's not just the AI that I keep hearing about. Okay, awesome. Matej,
I think that's a big part of it for sure.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure you would not see this coming, but I would say Facebook. Because they're in such a big shithole now, it's really, really bad. It's not really working. They're far behind on all the different optimizations, but I can see things moving in the right direction that no one else can see, and it's super exciting what's coming on into Facebook in Q1 and during the whole year in 2025.
Interesting. So buy Meta stock, short AppLovin. Okay, got it.
This is
Brendan.
this is not an advice.
Not investment advice. Okay, I gotcha. Caveat issued. Brendan, what ad partners do you think will be most interesting in 2025?
I'm going to say our own. I feel like my marketing team would get a little upset at me. I think we should our own horn out here.
Yes, they would.
No, absolutely. And just to add that, maybe not a specific partner, but if you're playing in the open internet space, right, you've got much more eyeball time than the sort of Facebook's, Google's owned and operated, right? And because you're playing in that space, and if you're going to mention the AI, right? If I'm going to quickly speak on Moloco, it's setting it up in a way and making sure that these very complex algorithms, these are very complex things that are all operating under the hood, are translatable and digestible by actual buyers. And I think that's something that we've really leaned on with our team, right? I think that we've been described in some of our recent partner surveys, the nerdiest guy in the room. When we're in our sort of bi-weekly meetings or QBRs or anything like that with our partners. And that's because of exactly that. We're working really hard to dive deep into data, to develop the strategy, because the open internet is so wide and vast. And having those levels of transparency and service we found that that's what marketers want at the end of the day, so that they're not
A plus
bombarded
gold
over-
star. Your marketing team is going like this right now. No, that was a good job. I like that. That's great. Kyle, we're going back to you. What channels do you think will be most interesting 2025?
Yeah, so this is where I will take the opportunity to talk a bit more about Rewarded and Mistplay, right? But I am just speaking in general, right? I think you see one, right? We talked about earlier, Reward has been around for over 10 years, but now it's really starting to catch its own stride in that next leg up of the value it can provide. We're seeing everyone out there, right? Yes, it's a hyper competitive space now, and Rewarded is mentioned at every single conference, every single podcast, but that there's a ton of demand, and all of these apps and platforms are starting to find that incremental scale to grow their user base, right? Grow their earned and operated inventory. So I think that's exciting for next year. I think it comes back to the idea of those bespoke engagement features, right? Similar to like I was just praising Moloco, the same can be done on the rewarded side, right? You can work with a partner like Mistplay and really talk about engaging features, activations, initiatives that can rally the users around the game for long-term engagement and enjoyment, right? It's not just plugging in a bunch of CPAs. There's features, there's a bunch of initiatives that can really enrich that experience and drive long-term engagement. And then lastly, we're starting to see Rewarded start to creep into the iOS space, right? So all of that value of Rewarded now starting to become unlocked onto the iOS side, which I think game publishers are going to be excited about as well.
They're going to be all over that. Absolutely. If you can do that and you've got a first party scenario there and you got good data and you can do cool stuff and matching, that's filling a big need. Also interesting possibilities potentially long term with growth, maybe even some retargeting, which would be super, super interesting. And of course, we know is a challenge in iOS. Okay. Channels, Matej, what channels do you think will be most interesting in 2025?
Well, funnily enough, Kyle, I was the one who had the presentation about UA diversification, the Unite, the Upfest, and I was talking about rewarded ads, rewarded UI channels. And I believe this is going to be definitely growing in 2025. And I believe because it makes sense. It's just kind of we need to be careful about, like I said, the methodology of tracking users and then like how that translates into the LTV predictions and what happens after they all get rewards and all of the fun stuff around it. But I believe this is going to grow because it's I mean, the growth was already here, and it's just now people are skeptical about the rewarded UHLs for some reason because it says like this was the peak, but you're just starting. I believe we are just starting. It evolved so much in the last few years. I remember the days when I worked with Mistplay. It was CPI campaigns. It's baking the days. I can say baking the days. Now it's very super advanced, and I'm looking forward to it.
Cool, very cool. Brendan, your thoughts?
Also couldn't lean on Rewarded here.
Wow.
There you go.
Did you guys meet before?
Well, this isn't a nice scratch by a back, you'll scratch mine kind of thing. But I look at where our partners are spending money, right? When we're in conversations, obviously, we're in direct competition with the Liftoffs and the App 11s of the world for budget. But when we look at where our partners are supplementing their, SAN spend, their DSP spend, it used to be maybe just Mistplay, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now we have 3, 4, 5 other companies that are now rising in that space, and at a certain time, that hyper competitiveness is a little bit of validation of the space. People are able to find value and find users who are going to become sticky. They're going to become long term through these channels, which is something that maybe 10 years ago, when it was just traditional offer walls, that kind of rewards was kind of a no-no, right? The whole thing is shifted in a way that people are getting smarter, right? They're targeting these kind of spaces within their game. They're putting the rewards in places in their games that showcase much more than just like doing that one thing. And when you're able to do that, users get a truer and better experience of games that they maybe wouldn't have gone in and done in the first place from traditional UA channels. And I think marketers are finding value there. Going into 2025, I expect Rewarded to continue to grow.
Wow.
One more thing, sorry, just to jump in, because I just remembered I ran a survey on my subscribers, and I had there two questions. How much money you spent on the rewarded UA at the moment, which was 20-30%. And then there was a question if you would like to increase that budget in 2025, and there was like 100% yes. So
Wow. Huh. Okay. Very, very cool. And that's, I mean, I know you have a subscriber. I think your subscriber base is something like 10,000 UA pros or something like that. I don't know what it is
on
lately.
Substack it's 10, and then almost 7 on LinkedIn. So it's around
Okay.
16,000
So it's a good
people.
group of UA pros answering that. Nice. Okay, Kyle, we're back to you. And here's the what have I missed? What have I not talked about in diversification that we should have talked about?
So I think, before you get to while you're thinking of diversification, I think there's two comments I'd add here. One is know your risk tolerance, right? Because yes, it's one thing to be like, yeah, I want a really diverse portfolio. Yes, that's probably good. But let's say, one of your partners is 40, 50, 60% of your media mix. If you can accept that risk, then you can operate that way, because I'm assuming you're getting really good quality from that source and you want to maximize it. If you can't accept that risk, right, and you wake up one day, right, and the campaign's underperforming and you didn't touch any buttons, and it's an algorithm change on the partner side, or creative all of a sudden fatigued, and now you're scrambling to adjust and bounce back, and that bounce back, because of the dependency on all these algorithms and learning, can take several days, or it can ripple into a couple of weeks. If you're not able to stomach that risk, that's where you really need to make sure you're diversified. That's really where you need to make sure you're testing, so that you can get new partners in the media mix to see what winners you can get to scale those.
It's interesting because Matej started off and he was saying, when you're small, you have a chance. Where do I put my money? When you're big, you have a problem. Where do I put my money? Right. And you're saying, hey, there's a risk, because there's risk on both sides, right? There's risk when you add new partners. It's a layer of challenge and complexity and additional stuff to manage. But it's also a risk when you have too few and you've got all your eggs in one basket. That makes perfect sense. Cool. Matej, what have I missed that we need to talk about in diversification?
So in my mind, the UA diversification is not only about channel diversification, it's also within the channel. So diversifying on different campaign levels and optimizations, and also on the creative side as well, because you have different creatives which are kind of appealing to different types of audiences. And that's a very big part of the whole UA diversification, because then you have different UA channels, and then it's underneath those channels you have diversification, and then kind of adds up on a lot of time that you need to use for managing all the campaigns.
Yes.
But yeah,
the other piece. Go ahead.
Yeah, those are the two other kind of layers of diversification that needs to happen.
The other piece that you just unlocked in my brain right there is diversification for placements. Now, this is particularly true of like a Meta or of a Google, where they like a Google have I counted at one time, it was like over 100 different placements. I'm sure it's more than that in different areas and things like that. And Meta has that, but you guys will have that as well, and many ad networks have that as well. You certainly see that in Apple search ads, right, where certain placements are cheaper, some are better. So it's actually diversifying there and tailoring your ads for those to know that like UAC or whatever they call it now, app campaigns, they want to put your ads everywhere, but if you only give them certain creatives, they can only put them somewhere, right? And sometimes that's a better thing. So cool. Yeah, Brendan, you have last hits, your last one. You can diss us all if you wish. Nobody can reply. What have I missed?
No, I think, just speaking for us, right? So we've had tons of partners. We're usually, as we mentioned earlier, not the first. So we're part of this diversification discussion for most of our customers that add us on, right? We're very rarely the first partner they add. And so the question asks us, why should we add Moloco, right? Why should we add any DSP? What I always tell them is, and I think this is something we mildly touched on, is you have to look at what incremental value are you providing here, right? And that goes beyond hey, I had 100 installs from this partner, I added you, and now I have 70 from that partner, and you have 30. How did
this work?
What happened? Then you have to go to the next level, and you have to think very deeply. Are those installs coming in cheaper, and how is that being driven? Right? Is it being driven with sort of relatively normal click-through rates? Is it being driven with absurd click-through rates, or this is clearly just some sort of gaming going on with the creatives and playing an attribution game, or is this partner actually adding incremental value? And being able to take those extra steps is necessary if you're going to be bringing on a new partner, right? Because if not, performance can look great and it can shift installs from one partner to another. But if you're not really assessing, hey, what is this creative doing? What is this driving? Is there a human on the other end of this that saw this ad and clicked on it because they were interested in my game and then installed and now they're playing, right? Is this partner driving that kind of value? I think is a super important question to ask when you're adding in any level of diversification, right? Because you can spend twice as much money with two partners and get the same or maybe a small little lift in installs, but ultimately it's making that decision and understanding, what value is this new partner actually providing. That can be even outside of incrementality, right? Maybe they have services, maybe they have this, that, and the other that's important, but I think it starts there. It starts there with your core goals.
Cool. You know what, guys? I think we did it. I didn't believe it off the top. I listed a whole lot of different topics, areas, and I said maybe we'll get through in an hour. I mean, I think we did. It's pretty freaking amazing. You guys are pretty freaking amazing. Thank you for spending this hour with us, and thank you for sharing your insights and knowledge.
Thank you very much.